Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this week's episode of A Journal for All Seasons, Journaling for Self-Care. I'm actually filming this little bit, excuse me, after I've made the rest of the video because I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to talk about. So I just want to give you, sorry there's the light shining in my glasses, I just wanted to give you a little heads up, trigger warning I guess they call it, that I am going to talk a little bit about relationship breakdowns and processing difficult feelings. So if you're feeling at all sensitive, then just be aware of that. Okay, I'm now going to cut you into my desk and we're going to have a look through my journal up to this point. Since we've just passed kind of the halfway point of the year, and since I've been having some issues with the moon stitching project, not the stitching but the writing of the 3 words, just, you know, if you're new here and you don't know, I've been stitching the phase of the moon every day since the last full moon, and I've been endeavouring to write 3 words every day that represent how I'm feeling. And the stitching, straightforward, the tea dyeing, you know, that I'm doing on the little pieces of cloth and everything, no issue whatsoever, absolutely my wheelhouse as they say. But coming up with the 3 words has been challenging, and I think I picked 3 words, well, various reasons. One, I was kind of inspired by the what 3 words thing, where every 3 square metres of the planet has 3 words assigned to it, so that it can be identified. And I've always liked the idea of that because I kind of like threes of things, and I thought, you know, morning, noon and night, so I could write how I felt when I woke up in the morning, how I felt around the middle of the day, and then how I felt in the evening. But it's turned out to be challenging, and it's definitely something that I want to explore in more detail and talk about with you in more detail. Also, Jeri Bellini over on her channel last Monday did a little vloggy video with her thoughts on the matter following a health issue that she's facing. But I won't share her story here, but you know, if you're interested in hearing her thoughts and you don't follow Jeri, do go over and have a look. I will put a link below. Quite apart from being lovely and interesting and great to watch, she also does lots of lovely stitching projects and other crafts. So do check Jeri out. Anyway, so the halfway mark, I thought what I would do for this week is do not really a flip through, but more just look through my journal, see what kind of thoughts my journey over the last 6 months brings up, and just share that process with you a little bit and see what happens really. And maybe, you know, if you've been keeping a journal, or if you keep a journal and you don't already do that, maybe it's an idea, if you want to and if you feel up to it, to sit with your own journal and just go back through, you know. Some ways journaling, the process itself is enough. You know, you can journal and burn it, and that's cathartic in itself. Other kinds of journaling are other people or in other moments you want to look back and see. I don't really know where I sit with that. This is kind of my first year keeping this kind of journal. So yeah, so without further ado, let's start wittering and start opening and looking through. So, issues on the journal itself. I made it nice and big because I started doing mixed media in it, and I may well return to that, and I wanted, you know, big pages. I think I would have preferred it slightly smaller. I was kind of guided by these book covers that I had, but I think I would have preferred it a bit smaller. And I must say as well, I think I might have liked it to be more square, less long and narrow, but that's just, you know. And another issue is I put lots of different kinds of pages in it in a kind of junk journal style, and I found some of those a challenge to work on. My thoughts were, rather than having lots of white pages, if I had different coloured pages that would help, but actually I found it a bit restrictive. So those are my overall thoughts on the kind of technicalities of it rather than the emotions side of it. So let's open it. And in the front are some of my sketches. They're not really part of the journal, but I've been sketching for a couple of years, practicing, and I've recently started painting on some of them. I think I showed some of them in a recent video. A couple of you said you couldn't really see them under the, because I held them up, you know, because of the lighting. See, her I drew, my tree woman, and I was quite pleased with her. and I wanted to put some colour on her, but I didn't want to mess up my drawing, so I traced her and transferred her onto this other piece of paper and then painted. And that's something you can do, you know, yourself if you haven't thought of that. If you do a drawing that you like, just trace it or photocopy it, and then you can develop it further and keep your original. That was doing the image transfer. That's another sketch I copied from a book. Right, let's get rid of those. So this was my title page, which was some eco print, and I did some collage, including this archway to kind of symbolise going through into my future. And this is a haiku that I wrote a few years ago in one of my stitch journals. And it's, I'm my own shadow and I walk behind myself and I bear witness. One of the things that's come up is I have written poetry of different kinds. I've written haiku, I've kept stitch journals and written a few words every day, sometimes about what I've done, sometimes about my feelings. So I kind of thought that, you know, I can do this, I've got this. But there's something with this moon and the 3 words that's been challenging, and I don't know if it's the limitation of the 3 words or whether it's just where I am in my life and the emotions I'm processing, or what it is. But yeah, so that's why I wanted to sort of do this really. This page, this was the first proper kind of spread we did. On this page I wrote stream of consciousness stuff that I wanted to get out, and then I gessoed over it. And this is a quote from Brené Brown. See, that's another thing. I think that I can look for words that other people have written, or use found words from magazines and, you know, old books and things, and kind of curate them, if you like. It's yeah. I'm really thinking aloud here. And I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts and, you know, any experiences you've had along a similar line that you're happy to share. But because also I think we don't have to get everything out. I mean, I know that in some areas, I'm not a therapist, I'm not trained, I haven't been in therapy, I know next to nothing. Okay, that's my ride and my disclaimer, if you like. But I think for me personally, some things I'd rather keep buried, and whether that's right or not I don't know. And I've had a few messages recently from some of you lovely people and some of you who are trained in different kinds of therapy and counselling, and I've kind of been reassured that you don't have to dot the I's and cross the T's on every little feeling, you know. It's not necessary for your healing. So that was that spread. Visually I quite like it still, you know, the way it looks. I can't remember what I wrote under there. I know who it was about and what it was about, but not the actual content. And I quite liked that writing and then painting over it as an idea. So that's my thoughts on that page. In this little envelope is a poem that I wrote, which I won't read again, but there's a whole playlist if you're new of every spread and its creation. So if you want more detail on the spreads, you can go and look them up. This spread, again, was collage, very dark, and it was inspired by this image from a magazine of this woman teetering on the edge. And I guess that's how I felt at the beginning of this kind of new stage in my life. I was newly single last year, again, if you're new here, after a 20-year relationship. So there's this idea that you're teetering on the edge, and these words were mine, but inspired by this image. You could fall, but you might fly. So that's kind of that duality in that image. I still feel a little bit like this woman 6 months later. I know these things can take years. I know, you know, I know. I think when you kind of go up and down with things, when you go up, I can only speak for myself, sort of feel optimistic and think, oh, I'm making progress, it's all going better, and then you backslide, or I backslide, and you get despondent because you think, oh, I thought I was moving forward and now I've gone back again. This was an exercise in neurological drawing, where you take a line for a walk and then you round out the junctions, and it's very mindful and meditative, and that is something I enjoyed doing, and that is maybe as I'm an artist. I know it's not completely evident by some of the stuff I show you, but I do feel that I'm an artist. I shouldn't apologise. That's something else I'm working on, not apologising for myself. So maybe a visual language is more me, whether that's through stitching or drawing or painting or, you know, some other crafting with paper or cloth or whatever. But I've always been a wordy person. I studied English literature for A-level, and also when I was at university I did 2 English literature courses alongside my main degree. I've always read books, I've always loved books and words. So I guess I kind of feel that I should, and now I'm shoulding myself, be able to express myself. But yeah, it's complex. I hope this wittering is speaking to some of you and helping some of you, and maybe you can even help me and us with your response to it. This was another haiku I wrote, but this was something my granny would say when you asked her where she was going. She'd say there and back again to see how far it is. But that little haiku represents life, doesn't it? Where are you going? You're just there for the journey. Well, depending on your view, but that's my view. It's about the journey. This again, gateways, doorways, like the first spread, and the dark and the bright rather than dark and light. So that's a theme that's emerging as I look back through. So this is the kind of represented the door back into the past. And I've got some found text here, freedom was possible. And there's a kind of gate or fence across, barring the way, but there's a little bird sitting on the fence. And then this is the door forward into a brighter future, discover life and birds and flowers and so on. And hope with a feather, because Emily Dickinson, hope is the thing with feathers. The birds singing, the music, you know. I think this is the best place of all. That came from a book, but that's standing on the threshold, looking forward, is the best place of all, because it's the anticipation. It's like when you're a kid and it's Christmas. I don't know if you had this, or a birthday or some kind of, you know, event. The looking forward to it was almost better than the actual reality of it sometimes. Sounds a bit sad when I say that, but I hope you know what I mean. This was Brigid, because this was Imilk. This was an image from a magazine that I painted over to make it look painted. I loved this visually. I was really thrilled with how this came out. The swan from a magazine and the lilies from an old book. And the sort of surreal, sort of ghostly almost appearance of her face. And yeah, I really, as an art piece, I really loved this. And this was a poem that I wrote myself. The wheel of the year turns, lifting the lid of winter. I won't read all of it, otherwise I'll be here all day. But like I said, you can go back and look at each individual one. And here are 3 little feathers that I found on the path. That's another theme, apparently, feathers. This was a quite difficult spread to do. These were photographs of myself that I photocopied at all different times in my life, going from a baby through to relatively recently. Actually, there's nothing that recent here. And I sat with each photograph and I wrote my thoughts about the photo. And then I printed them out. So before I got my lovely typewriter that the children got me for my birthday, but I used a font that looked a bit like typewriter and printed them out. So, you know, like here's me when I was a little girl, and I wrote my dad taught me to swim and fish. But some of the later photos, the photos that were taken during my time in my past relationship, when I sat with them and wrote, a lot of negative things came out. And when I came to put them onto my journal spread, they didn't make the cut, literally, because I cut the words out and stuck them on. And some of the negative things that I'd written, I didn't stick in here. And I took that at the time as a hopeful sign, and I still do. And then for the inside, I made this little book. And I put in pictures of myself with my friends, or just my friends. This is my little book of friends. And under there is a photo. I don't actually want to look at it now, but if you want to see it and hear more about why I don't want to look at it, you can go back to this video in the series. No, I really don't want to look at it. Sorry, I'm not doing that to, you know, keep you hanging on or anything. I just don't want to. Which I could back then. Back then it was difficult, but I looked at it. At the moment, I don't want to. This I started rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and so I did this with The Wolf and the Moon. And this is a quote from Clarissa: "The psyches and souls of women also have their own cycles and seasons of doing and solitude, running and staying, being involved and being removed, questing and resting, creating and incubating, being of the world and returning to the soul place." And I think this is what got me started, really, about thinking about the moon and how I felt might relate to the phases of the moon. And I do think it does, in a sense, but there's way more to it than that, isn't there? All these things are always much, much more complex. And around the outside of the moon I wrote circles and circles and circles and circles, which is from a Tori Amos song called Cloud on My Tongue, which I've loved Tori Amos since the 80s. And that some of the songs now that are so familiar to me, when I listen to them with kind of new ears, and it's as if they were written for my situation, and that song, Cloud on My Tongue, absolutely is, or was. Well, I'm sure she didn't write it with 20 years foresight specifically for me, but you know what I mean. This was much more of an art piece, and it felt very personal as well, because I wrote 2 pieces of text, one about my own inner resources, what I feel I've got within me to help me cope with stuff, and then one about my outer resources, you know, my friends, my children, you all, nature, stuff in the outside world. And then I tore the pages up and wove them together as if those 2 groups of resources would be a cloak to protect me. And that, again, I love it visually, and I love that process of doing that. I feel that these things are kind of helpful short term, but I'm feeling now that I don't know if that's sticking. And maybe it's just that I'm expecting too much too quickly of myself and this process. I don't know. I'm literally just telling you what comes into my head, as per usual. This again came from Clarissa Pinkola Estes. This is about Vasilisa with the little doll of intuition. The story about her having this doll in her pocket, and also the idea of kintsugi, or the Japanese art of mending broken china with gold. So my woman here in this image is broken, but she's mended, and the mend is gold. And then the quote here is from Najwa Zebian, and it's "From the ashes I rose, and I stitched the pieces of my soul back together with gold." And a little pocket with a little Vasilisa doll in it. That is something, that imagery of having a doll of intuition, that I have used quite a lot in the last few weeks or months since I reread the book. If I'm asked to do something, or if I have to make a decision or something, I have a very powerful image that's almost real of a doll in my pocket jumping up and down. It's happened a few times, saying, no, Catherine, that's not the right thing to do. So that as an image has been really helpful for me, you know, to enable myself to now I'm alone and I have to make decisions alone, to have the doll in my pocket, which I think of as my own experience of life, and, you know, things other people have said to me, and all that kind of amalgamated together, and what's within me that forms my intuition. And I now see that as a literal doll in my pocket. And the little doll that Maria sent me recently with the doll in the pocket, I found that so moving. And I don't know that I've really spoken about the doll in the pocket being such a deep thing for me, but Maria apparently had picked that up. Now this was doing a pop-up. So this was an art piece really, because I wanted to do this pop-up thing, which I do still love, and I love this background page, the colours and the gold and the texture and everything. And this here was another poem that I wrote myself, I do believe, yes. Which again I won't read it all, but it's about rescuing yourself and flying. But you can go back and look if you need a reminder, or you haven't seen that and you're interested. This was very much for the process, grid journaling, and also inspired by Maya Angelou, a quote from a poem of hers, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike," something that has struck me. And I mean, I think a lot of us here in this community are alike, because, you know, birds of a feather flock together and all that. It's not that we're we're diverse in the sense that we're, many of us, from different countries, different upbringings, different backgrounds, different cultures. But I think on the whole, without excluding anybody, I know there's some gentlemen who watch, and I don't mean to exclude you at all, but the majority of us here are women of a certain age, who obviously love stitching and art and crafting and creating. So, you know, that already puts us in a certain group, doesn't it? But I think in the wider world, everybody on the planet, we are more alike than we are unalike, and that was what really struck me. And I don't talk about things in the wide world generally, but, you know, we all know what's going on all over the world. We can't avoid it, however hard we try, and the, you know, the division and so on. And I think that from Maya was just... that was troubling me, so that's why I did that. And the grid journaling as a process, again, is a lovely, lovely process. It's like the neurographic art. I just find the process calming. And that's maybe something else I can think of doing when my mind is troubled. Rather than writing and trying to get the words out, which is, I think, what I've been struggling to do, maybe it is okay to give myself permission to do an artistic process and visually get the feelings out. That makes sense. And this was because I read Opal Whiteley. This quote actually came from Women Who Run With the Wolves, which led me to read the Opal Whiteley book, her journal. And this was about going into the woods where I feel safe and loved and comforted by the trees and so on. And her fear that was is gone. And also doing some painting, which is something I would like to be better at. This was in celebration of dandelions and using this salt on watercolour technique, so that was quite an art-inspired piece. Yeah, I didn't go into any emotions or anything like that in particular. I think that was just, for me anyway, purely about the art side of it. This was my garden design. My garden, every morning I go into my kitchen and roll up my blind and see my little garden out of the window, and that is one of my glimmers. I think the glimmers are coming later if you don't know what they are. Seeing my garden. It's, you know, it's been quite a lot of work, especially the structural part of it, but it gives me so much joy every day when I open the window and see all my little flowers blooming and see what's come into flower and what's going over, and, you know, it's just, yeah, it's a joy. It really is a joy. And there's Gertrude. This was making circles, so we collaged and then cut circles out of the collage, and I did some stitching into them. I think this was maybe the first time stitching started creeping in, and a line from Joni Mitchell's The Circle Game, about going round and round. And we can't return, we can only look behind, you can't go back. So there was some element of journaling in there. I'm just going to have a sip of my tea, which is getting cold here. And there's Maya Angelou again. Phenomenal woman. This was, I did not yet have my dreads back. I very much think about them having come back, which is, you know, it was 7-8 years ago when I took them out. So this is new hair that's regrown since then. Because after I took them out, I had my hair cut, you know, sort of to a bob. but I very much feel that they're back. Do you know what I mean? It's not literally the same hair, but it feels like it is. So that's okay. So this is the poem Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou, about celebrating your womanhood. So I had an image here from I think it's a printout, and embellished her with some fancy hair. Phenomenal Woman, that's me, and that's all of you as well, unless you're a guy, and then you're a phenomenal man. This quote from Hafiz of Shiraz. This came from the Poetry Pharmacy. I shared that video with you, the link to that video. And there's a picture of me with my dreads in the woods, with golden light glowing off me. And this is something that I have not stuck it on my bathroom mirror. I should. I guess I kind of thought because I memorised it I didn't need to. But just memorising something isn't the same as seeing it every day. I think when I finish making this video I'm going to go and write that on a piece of paper and stick it on my bathroom mirror. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. Yeah, I shall do that. This was the collage butterfly. There's my butterfly ring to go with it. So I was just thinking about metamorphoses, and that was very personal because I do feel like I've gone through a metamorphosis. I don't think I've changed. I think I've come back to myself, if that makes sense. There's probably some things in me that have changed because experience changes us, but on the whole I feel like I am not a new, different person, but I am coming back to the person I was, if that makes sense. I do know that a couple of you here in the comments have shared a similar experience and understood and understand. This was the poem The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy that I was thrilled to find because it's out of copyright, so I could read it to you. I won't read it again, but it's quite a dark poem in a way. But with a little thread of hope running through it, and again Emily Dickinson, The Thing with Feathers, Hope, the Thing with Feathers. And yeah, The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy, and I live in Hardy country, he was from these parts. And here was Out and Out Mending, Out and Out Stitching, sorry. This was a song written by Claire Buttery Woodburn called All the Little, and it was a good few years ago, she messaged me saying she hoped I didn't mind because she had been inspired by me and India Flint and other people working with natural dyeing and eco-dyeing and mending and so on. This I took 2 pieces of cloth from clothing of mine, and in under there is a piece of cloth from my ex, trapped in there to kind of represent that that's still in me. I feel okay about that. I still feel that is, yeah, I feel okay about that. But I want to move on all the same. This was about the glimmers. So on here I wrote my glimmers on a piece of paper. A glimmer is kind of the opposite of a trigger. So it's little moments in your day that just lift your heart a little bit. So like I said, one of my glimmers is when I open the blind in the morning and see my little garden. And it's a quote from Atticus, there is always a glimmer in those who have been through the dark. And then we're into the moon. Now we're into the problematic moon. Not only problematic because my double-sided tape doesn't stick to this gesso very well, and they're all getting creased, and it's all going wrong. The stitching, I enjoy. I've always enjoyed doing a daily little stitch, and I've done different versions of it over the years for a certain number of days. You know, sometimes I just do it till I stop. Other times I say, right, I'm going to do 100 days. With this one we've said we're going to do 28 days. But it's become a chore. Now I look at it now and I think it's become a chore. It's become that in the evening, which is when I do my stitch part and write my words, I think, oh no, I've got to do that. And part of me feels bad saying that, since I instigated it and many of you are doing it, but, you know, possibly none of you are having that same response, it's only me. And I find that really interesting because me, who loves doing these daily stitch things and ritual and all that, for this particular project, yeah, it's become a chore. I don't know how else to put it. And I think the stitching part has become a chore because what is looming while I'm stitching is that I have to come up with these 3 words, which that day was okay. Blessed, sympathetic, upbeat. But it's not really that some of the days haven't been okay. It's more, I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is. I'd hoped doing this flip through I might get some more clarity, but why can I write a haiku or a poem or a full poem or look up a quote from other people? Sorry. Or choose words out of my found text that say what I feel, but I can't just pick 3 words. What I think I'm going to do, I'm filming this, you'll see this on Monday, but I'm filming it Wednesday back, so I've still got a few more to do. I think I've got nearly all of the last week. I've got 6 more to do, so I'm in my last 7 days. I'm someone who has to finish things once they start. It's a character quirk. It's something that last year got me through making a video every week for you. 2 videos every week, I think it was, a Wonky Wednesday and a Stitch Journal video, without fail, even when I had to film a few in advance, because that's my character. If I've committed to something, then I have to see it through, no matter what. My friend at the time kept saying, just tell them you need a couple of weeks off, they'll understand. And I said, nope, I've said I'll do it, so I'm doing it. It's kind of pig-headedness, I guess. I don't know. And I feel a little bit the same about this. I have to finish this. And I have to carry on with the 3 words. I've had messages from a few of you saying don't push yourself if it's just 1 word or if it's no words, that's fine. And I know that's fine, and that is what I would say to you. But for myself, I think I just need to. Even though I'm now feeling irritated, unsettled, regretful, that's pretty accurate, I think. But I think sometimes I'm feeling that it's not 100% authentic, that I'm just writing 3 words. I mean, I'm not saying it's totally wrong. I'm not saying that I'm putting I'm happy if I'm not or whatever. But it doesn't, I don't know, I can't, this hasn't achieved it. Well, it must have achieved something. I'll watch this back in a bit to edit and see what it has achieved. But just to say, be aware, and I'm very sorry, I hope I haven't set anyone else off into very unpleasant ruminations at the beginning of this project, because I do feel I was a little bit glib about it, saying, oh, we'll do this moon stitching every day and we'll write down our emotions. And, you know, without, if going back to Jeri's video, she very sensitively talks about, you know, this kind of stuff is fine for people who are generally fine and just want to, you know, improve their emotional intelligence a little bit. But if you're really struggling in it with anything in particular, then you need to you know, perhaps you could look for experienced help in some way. I think I should have said that. I am going to shove myself at the beginning of this project. And so many apologies if I have made anyone, you know, made it difficult for anyone. I am now going to go and film a little intro to this video just to prepare you, because I didn't do that, I haven't done that yet because I didn't know what I was going to say, so I will now go and sit and do that, so you'll see it, you know, the other way around, but now I know what I've said. So yeah, basically I think moving forward with this journal now, again, I will finish it and there will be a video every week, come hell or high water. I think I'm going to go back to more arty pages and maybe explore other ways of writing. Now, something I've done quite a lot of in the past, and I've even done it a bit in stitching, is asemic writing. So it's writing without meaning. And somebody shared with me recently. I'm not going to name or go into too much detail because I'm not entirely sure if she wanted me to, and I haven't specifically asked, but a way of writing so that it's you do write words but it's illegible to yourself and anybody else, and that really spoke to me because, like I said way back here, I liked this where I wrote and gessoed over. So I think more of that, or writing and cutting it up, or if there's going to be writing and it's not just these quotes from other people or little poems or found text, for me, I think I'm not someone who wants to write an actual journal. That doesn't stick with me if I try to do that. If I try every day to write pages and pages of how I feel, it just doesn't stick with me. So I think, maybe other ways of exploring writing, because I did try a little bit this morning, writing, and because I woke up feeling not very great, and it did help. It did get it out, and it will come back, I'm sure. The stuff that came out, it's not like it's gone forever. It's a process you probably have to keep repeating. So going forward, I think we'll do more arty stuff, more mixed media with stitch. I definitely love doing the stitching in here. And we'll see where we get. We'll do that for a bit and we'll see where we get to. But I'm definitely going to carry on with this series, like I said, because I'm not a commitment phobe, I'm a commitment file. Is that a thing? A commitment file, yeah. Would be the opposite of phobe, wouldn't it? So there we go. So, let's close it. So thank you so much for watching and listening. I really hope I haven't upset anyone, as always. That is never my aim. My aim is to either make you laugh and, give you some jolly fun in your day, help you and encourage you with your stitching or whatever it is, or help you with processing if that's what you need to do in my very clumsy, untrained way. Like I said, it's more about sharing my own journey and you seeing if you can, resonate, if any of that resonates with you, or you can get anything from it or not. You're all different. There's a lot of you out there. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for watching. I love you all, and I look forward to you joining me next time. Lots and lots of love and kisses. Bye bye.